Jesus told us a story in Luke 16, verses 19 to 31. He told us a story about a man who ran out of time. What did he say? He said there was a certain rich man who was splendidly clothed in purple and fine linen, and who lived each day in luxury. This man was rich. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, who was covered with sores. As Lazarus lay there longing for scraps from the rich man's table, the dogs would come and lick his open sores. Yuck. Poor guy. Imagine if that happened to you. Finally, the poor man died and was carried by the angels to sit beside Abraham at the heavenly banquet. The heavenly buffet. The rich man also died and was buried, and he went to the place of the dead. There in torment, he saw Abraham in the far distance with Lazarus at his side. The rich man shouted, "Father Abraham, have some pity. Send Lazarus over here to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue. I am in anguish in these flames." But Abraham said to him, "Son, remember that during your lifetime you had everything you wanted, and Lazarus had nothing. So now he is here being comforted, and you are in anguish. And besides, there is a great chasm separating us. No one can cross over to you from here, and no one can cross over to us from there." Then the rich man said, "Please, Father Abraham, at least send him to my father's home. For I have 5 brothers, and I want him to warn them so they don't end up in his place of torment." But Abraham said, "Moses and the prophets have warned them. Your brothers can read what they wrote." The rich man replied, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone is sent to them from the dead, then they will repent of their sins and turn to God." But Abraham said, "If they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't be persuaded even if someone rises from the dead." Wow. I'll tell you what. People who say the New Testament is the more loving God, as if the wrathful God and loving God are somehow 2 different gods. I'll tell you what, that certainly doesn't seem very loving from the outside perspective, that someone would watch their child burn in hell. But you see, the point of that story is that this man had every opportunity on earth to turn to God and follow God. Now, this isn't about Christ yet because he has not died on the cross. But the same rules applied in the Old Testament world, where it was very important that you were a good person and you did good deeds. The reason was different, but it was still as important. And this rich man did nothing. He did nothing for this guy. He lived in luxury. He wore his purple. Purple was a very rich color. And he lived his life as a rich man, not helping this guy Lazarus. And Lazarus, all he wanted was some food. And so the takeaway from this, there's a couple takeaways. Number 1, ultimately you send yourself to heaven or hell. It's by the will of God, but it's your choice. It's your choice if you want to go to heaven or hell. And there's no one to blame except yourself if you go to hell. It's your fault because God gives you ample opportunities on this earth. You might be asking, what opportunity do I have if this guy is real? Well, if you're listening to this video and you're an atheist, there's your first sign that God is speaking to you through this video to go investigate him and to establish a relationship with him so that you are not thrown into the eternal fire, where you will not be begging to have someone put water on their finger and to put it on their tongue. I think what that meant is that it was so bad that even the smallest amount of grace would have saved him. Whoa. I just thought of that. I wonder if that's what that meant. Even the smallest amount of grace would have saved him from hell. I don't know how true that is. But the other part is that he says, look, if your father doesn't listen to Moses and the prophets, these guys that lived way back when and, helped Israel get free from Egypt, the slaves of Israel, he led them out, the Exodus. If your father and your brothers aren't going to listen to this guy, they're not going to care if someone rises from the dead. And this is an important takeaway about people who are always asking for signs. This is a perfect example of someone who says, well, if you just give me a sign, I would believe you. But what you don't think about is that we already have all the signs that we need. Why are so many others able to come find God without having any kinds of signs whatsoever? Because there's enough for us. And even if God gave us the biggest signs out there, people would still reject him. I believe there was a stat that was taken at some conference, and they asked their audience, if God gave you a sign, if God came down and revealed himself to you right now, would you follow him? And 85% of the audience said no. So that's even if all of a sudden these atheists said, oh God, you're real, I'm still going to reject you. So clearly, signs is not the problem. It's you. You are the problem for not trying to investigate the situation. And if you are wrong, then it's nobody's fault but yours. And you will watch that happen when you go to hell. I imagine they use the example of Abraham and this guy because these are two familiar faces. It would be as if you got sent to hell and then you see all your loved ones on the other side and they're like, you had your chance and now you're here forever. And it also shows hell is a real place that you do not want to go to. Jesus illustrates hell many times in the New Testament. This is one of those times. And yeah, very important to constantly be searching for truth. Because if you can't search for truth, if we don't live in an objective world, then that means we live in a chaotic world. But that can't be the case, because if we lived in a chaotic world, that would mean that there are no rules. I'm not talking about society. I'm talking about the rules of reality themselves. I can't fly. I cannot breathe underwater. There are rules to reality that I cannot break, which would have to imply that we live in an objective reality, that there is objective truth, which means somebody probably made it that way. Because if we came from chaos and we came from nothing, everything would just be, nothing would make any kind of sense whatsoever. There would be no rhyme or reason to anything. And you see what happens to a society that decides they want to reject God. The society becomes extremely chaotic, and they lose their sense of objective truth, and everything becomes okay. And it leads to nothing good. Nothing good comes from a society that thinks that way. And you end up watching Abraham and Lazarus tell you, sorry, man, you had your chance. And so this is your chance. If you're hearing this video, this is your chance to go explore, go investigate. What's the worst that can happen? So you try, and then you realize, not for me, I'm not doing it. But most likely, if you open your heart, well, not most likely, if you open your heart and your mind, you will find God. He will come to you. He will meet you in whatever place you are at. But you have to be open to it. If you're not open to it, that's it. It's over. So you need to humble yourself. What does he say? Humble yourself. Those who humble themselves will be exalted, and those who exalt themselves will be humble. So humble yourself so you can become exalted, so that you can enter the narrow gate to heaven.